Hi. If you have a child in elementary school, why do you hope that your school has good eggs? Stay tuned to Connecting Our Community and find out. Hi, I'm Pat Shoemaker. Welcome to Connecting Our Community. Our guest tonight is Sharon Stiefel. She's a professional school counselor and she's the author of The Good Egg Group. Welcome, Sharon, and tell us, first of all, what is the Good Egg Group?
It's actually a manual for school counselors for a group, a couple of versions of a group for children to help them to learn to accept themselves and others and to give them some ideas for how to cope with things when they don't exactly go how they would like them to go.
Is there a bad egg group?
No.
Oh, okay.
We don't have bad eggs at elementary school.
Of course not. Of course not. And how did this concept come about?
Well, I work with all kinds of kids, and one particular year I had 3 fifth grade boys that were particularly difficult. One was the class clown, and one was not participating in doing his work, and one just kind of liked to make fun of everybody else and make them miserable, and tried a number of things with them individually. And I was driving one day thinking, what am I going to do with these boys? I've got to do something. And all of a sudden, I don't know where it came from, except that it was springtime and it was Easter eggs and, you know, chicks and ducklings. Yeah. And I started thinking about Humpty Dumpty, who fell off the wall and couldn't put himself back together again because he was cracked. And I was thinking about some other activities that I had done in the past with eggs. And I remembered a quote about a friend is somebody who thinks you're a good egg, even if you're slightly cracked. And I was flooded with all kinds of ideas about activities I could do for these kids to help them to feel comfortable with themselves and then treat others comfortably as well.
And did it work?
It was better than I expected. Honestly, the boys were very insightful. One of them in particular had said that he often fools around because, especially during math, because he has no idea how to do math and he didn't want anybody to know. And the other one said that he made fun of people and was mean to them so they wouldn't make fun of him, which I knew, but it was good for them to know.
Right.
And then for them to deal with those kinds of feelings and insights in a way that they could help themselves.
Yeah. And as fifth graders, I'm sort of shocked that they would have that insight. Is that unusual at that age for
I
kids?
was shocked as well that they were as insightful as they were. But I've done the group a number of times with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and they all, through the activities that we do, they were able to really uncover the things they were doing. In the group we call them shell behaviors because shells protect your gooey insides, you know, and they're behaviors you do to keep yourself safe so others don't see what's inside. And they were very able to do that. And even the younger kids, I've tried the group with kindergarten through 2nd grade, slightly different version, and they had some pretty good insights as well, surprisingly.
Yeah. Do you think that as children get older, they lose that insightfulness, or they keep it more to themselves inside that shell and aren't as willing to release their thoughts?
Especially you get to upper elementary and middle school, they don't want to admit those things, so they put on a thicker shell to protect themselves. But when you talk about it, if you can approach it the right way, they are often very insightful. Yeah.
How long have you been a counselor?
Well, actually, I've done quite a few things. I've been a counselor not at school, so it's hard to add all that up. I've been a school counselor for 16 years.
Yeah. And have you noticed a difference? It just seems like with 24-hour news and all of the things that are going on in the world, not just in our neighborhoods or even in our country, but everything is just bombarding kids. I've often said I could not be a young person or raise a young person again because there's so much pressure and tension. It seems like adults have a hard time handling it. Have you noticed a difference in the 16 years that you've been in the schools?
Yeah, I think kids are more aware of things going on in the world that are worrisome, even for adults, and they don't know how to handle it. We see a lot more anxiety in school with kids, and a lot more kids are diagnosed with anxiety disorders than there used to be. And I think they grow up much faster. You know, the videos and the shows that they watch and the music they listen to. I know it sounds like very old fuddy-duddy, old-fashioned, but I think it's true. The words, the girls are dressing more in 3rd and 4th grade the way they used to dress in 6th and 7th grade, and the words that they use and know, I think it's more pressure on them.
Yeah. And do you do sessions of counseling, or do you call it just talking to them? Do you think that
I do. In my role, firstly, I go into classrooms and I do lessons once every three weeks in every classroom, and we talk about, you know, feelings. We talk about problem solving, conflict resolution, bullying, anxiety, you know, all those kinds of things. So kids are prepared for dealing with tough things. That's proactively for everybody. And then I do small groups, which this is, for those kids who are having particular issues with certain things in common. Could be divorce, could be grief, could be being the sibling of a special needs child, could be deployment, and a lot more anxiety groups than I used to. And then I do individual counseling with students. If they require in-depth, long-term counseling, we refer out. Not because we're not qualified, but because there's not enough time in the day.
And there's probably not enough time in the day to see all of the kids who would need such in-depth. Do you ever bring the parents in as well?
I contact parents if children are having extreme difficulties, or even if they're asking to see me again and again and again. I contact parents. I mean, I abide by confidentiality, so most of the time kids come see me and what they say stays there. But if there is a serious concern, I do contact parents, and I do let the children know in advance.
Yeah. And do you find that if you speak to children in a group that they are more likely to be open and honest, or do you think that they're more likely to be open and honest if you meet them one-on-one?
I think for most things, one-on-one, you get more honesty if they're comfortable with you, if they know you, which is the goal, is to make them comfortable.
Right.
Sometimes at first they're apprehensive, and it's one-on-one, so they're on the spot. Other times in groups, they're much more open to open up because somebody else said something that strikes true with them, and then they don't feel like there's something wrong with just them. You know, hey, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
that
and that does happen.
If there's a group and they all have that in common, that maybe they would be more likely to open up. Do you find any difference between boys and girls?
Surprisingly, no. Though, if I have groups that are mixed boys and girls, especially in 4th and 5th grade, then yes, the boys don't want to expose their weaker sides, and the girls, you know, don't want to either, really.
Yeah, exactly. And so, are you noticing that there's a change after maybe talking to you once, or do you have to keep playing the egg type games to let them be more comfortable over time before they really express their thoughts and feelings? And
well, individually, sometimes it takes a while before a child actually says what they want to talk about. Sometimes they ask to see me again and again with silly little things that they know the answers to. And I don't tell them the answers, I ask them, and they know them. And sometimes when they keep coming back, I know there's something else that they want to get to.
And are you finding that things are more stressful at certain times of the year for kids, or is it just pretty much year-round that?
There's something all year round. You know, I mean, at the end of the year, the kids fall apart, and they don't care anymore, or they're sad about the ending of the school year and they act like they don't care. And in the beginning of the year, they're apprehensive and not sure how things are working. Kids really need a lot of structure. They need to know what to expect. And when things start not being a routine, they do get a little out of kilter.
Yeah, and do you find that if you spoke to students, let's say, all through one school year, and then there's a summer break and they come back in the fall, have they regressed? Have they maintained what you might have taught them to do or say or feel or think?
Well, I think we have kids that learn the ideas, but they can't apply them. So over time, they do get better and better at applying them. And I have some kids that, because you already have a relationship, they really get into the heart of the matter sooner. So.
Yeah, it's not like the regression if they don't read for 2 months or they don't do math for 2 months or something like that.
It's a different kind of thing. I mean, they're always, you're right, with reading, they always kind of drop some ideas over the summer. I think sometimes with counseling kind of issues, they have time to sit and absorb it without having to use it on the spot, and then they come back and they're a little stronger. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, that's the hope. And speaking of coming back, that was a perfect segue. It is time for a break, so we will be back. Please stay with us. We'll be back to talk some more about the Good Egg and school counseling. So please don't go away.
When you donate goods in response to an international disaster, it's expensive.
They have to cross the sea, pass through customs, be inspected, sorted, then finally delivered.
And often they arrive too late to help, making your good intentions feel a little empty.
There is a better way.
Cash donations are fast, simple, and allow professional relief workers to purchase supplies close at hand.
Cash is best. Learn more at CIDI.org.
It's our duty to serve veterans and military families who serve their country in the most difficult ways imaginable. Together, we can say thank you in so many ways. Small acts of kindness mean more than anything. With our support, veterans and military families can face even the most difficult challenges. Let's honor their service with ours.
Hi, I'm Pat Shoemaker. Welcome back to Connecting Our Community. We've been speaking with Sharon Stiefel about the school counseling for elementary schools and your program, the Good Egg Group. So why did you write this manual? Is it just for your own teachers or is it for everybody?
Well, I wrote it because anything that I do, any of the ideas I have to work with kids, I always write them down. And when I create a group, I do not like taking something that somebody else did and utilizing it. And when I had this idea about all these different activities that I could do that would really help these particular boys we talked about, I just wrote it all down, and then I created a little workbook that they could work in that went along with the activities. And at a School Counselors Association meeting, I presented it just to share the idea because it was so successful with other counselors. And I had 50 counselors in my session, and they were all like, "You should publish this book. I would buy it." And it is primarily geared for school counselors, though kindergarten and elementary and first grade teachers could use a lot of the activities in there, just in their classrooms.
Yeah. What about parents? I mean, is it a book that a
No,
parent?
it's not really for parents. Though actually, some of the activities they could do might be helpful, but it's not really geared for parents so much.
So what are some of the activities that you've done?
Well, one of the ones that I really like is in the part about accepting others is I boil white eggs and I boil brown eggs, and I put them out and I ask each of the kids to take one, and we discuss if they're the same or different, and the kids of course say, well, they're very different. This one's white, this one's brown. Then I have them peel the eggs, and we get rid of the shells, and we put all the eggs on one plate. I said, do you know which ones are white and which ones are brown? And they were like, no. And so we talk about how what's on the outside, what you see, might look a little different, but inside we're all pretty much the same. Throughout the group, we make correlations between eggs and people. And then another day we do, I boil one white egg and I keep one raw. And then they say, oh yeah, they're exactly the same, they're all white. And then I crack them, they crack them, and one is hard boiled and one is raw. And so we talk about, even though, you know, you might say all white people are this way or all policemen are that way, you know, inside everybody is a little bit different. So those are some of the activities. We also do the Humpty Dumpty, sat on a wall, and, you know, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put them back together again. So we talk about what are ways, you know, if the king's horses and the king's men can't put you back together again, what can you do to put yourself back together again when you feel all cracked? And so just different kinds of visuals. And we do a game called Don't Put All Your Eggs in One Basket. And I have little plastic eggs, and inside are ideas of things they can do, you know, when they're feeling upset, or things they can do to encourage themselves or others. And the idea is you don't just have one idea, you have lots of ideas, different, because if you only had one and it didn't work, then what?
Exactly. Well, that's really cool. And I think really that those would be things that parents could do with their children. I mean, you know, they're fun, they're interesting, they're thought-provoking, as we say. Do you notice that, do you have a racially diverse group that you work with?
Yeah.
In choosing the eggs, I don't know why.
Interesting question. I know.
You know what I'm going to say.
Do they choose ones that
yes,
look more?
That look more like
I have not found that. And in fact, how they choose them was interesting. They usually just grab the one that's closer to them. They don't know what they're going to do with it. They don't think of them as people until after we discuss. And one time on the way to school, I crushed one of the eggs by accident, but I needed exactly that many eggs. So I put them out on the plate anyway, and I told them to pick one. And nobody picked the crushed egg. And that was a perfect teachable moment. Why wouldn't you pick the one that's crushed? Do you think just because it's cracked, it's not as good as the others? And, you know, it was a very good conversation.
I'll bet. Oh, that's true. So now do you always crack one of the
No,
eggs?
I thought about it, but it was a teachable moment at the time.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's a great idea. And are there things that you notice, just moving away from the games perhaps, but are there things that you notice about students or children that are sort of a red flag to you, that somebody needs to speak to that child, maybe the beginnings of something stressful happening or the beginnings of a not quite right thought process?
Yeah, well, usually teachers refer to me students that either have a change in the way that they are handling things, like maybe they're usually really good students and they do their work and they do quality work, and all of a sudden it is not looking like it was. Or if we have kids who are absent a lot all of a sudden, or kids who are not playing with other kids. I mean, there's one thing about being shy, and there's another separating yourself and withdrawing. And really, you know, everybody has their days and everybody has their quirks and their craziness, if you want to use that term. But, you know, when it gets in your way of functioning, that's usually when it's of great concern. You know, people say, oh, I'm kind of ADHD. Well, everybody's kind of ADHD, but when it gets in your way of being able to function, you know, you're always in trouble, or you know, you're withdrawing more and more, or you can't focus, then that's something to be concerned about.
And do you think that parents are the first people to notice this, or the last?
Usually they are the last to admit that they noticed it. You know, they may see things, and I don't blame them, because they see their child in isolation.
Right.
At school, we see their child, and though we know there's a range of behaviors and development, we usually notice when it is far out of that range. And a lot of parents, when we first approach them, you know, oh no, all kids
not
are
my
like
child.
that.
Right.
You know, and it takes a lot of empathy to understand where the parents are coming from, and education for them. Tell them, well, this is what we would expect, and this is what we're seeing. Before parents are often willing to accept. Now, I mean, there have been parents that come and say, I am really concerned, or they'll come and say, at what point should I be concerned?
Right. That's what I was going
And
to ask.
usually what I do is I turn it around and say, well, you're asking me, so what are you concerned about already?
Right.
And then in some cases I normalize that. You know, oh, my kid never tells me about school when they get home. Most kids don't. They need to unwind, they need a snack, they need to play, and you might not hear about what goes on at school until they go to bed that night. Oh, by the way, Mom, and parents sometimes think it's a delaying tactic for going to bed, but that is often the best time to hear what's going on. And other times, you know, I've had parents come and say, and I'll use ADHD because that's a very common thing that we get parents question about. And I have books and I show them, you know, these are some of the things. Do you see these kinds of things? You know, some of that's within the realm of normal, some of that far exceeds, you know. And we, of course, do not diagnose ADHD. It's a medical diagnosis, and that would be a case that we refer out.
Yeah. And do you find that certain things are more common among certain ages? In other words, you know, it used to be that if you wore glasses, that was really cool. I mean, that was a long time ago. But, but wearing glasses was a cool thing. So kids would want to wear glasses, and so they would sort of lie about their vision so that they could get glasses and be part of the group. Do you find that, is there anything like that? Have you noticed that maybe one child is diagnosed with ADHD and suddenly all of his or her friends are being diagnosed?
I don't usually find it with that. Well, I would say the only thing that I think people jump on the bandwagon about is bullying. You know, oh, this person's bullying me. Well, if that person was bullying you, well, these people are bullying me, and let's all go because that person's bullying all of us.
Yeah.
And honestly, bullying is a big word we hear about nowadays, and it exists, but most of what people think is bullying isn't. Most of it is just kids. Bullying is something very specific that is of great concern, but it is not what people think it is. It's kind of like everything else, you know. Everybody has that, but when it gets to an extreme, it's something to be concerned about. And everybody gets teased, and everybody gets made fun of, and everybody gets left out. But when it is a constant, again and again, on purpose to be hurtful, one person targeted, that's of great concern. And we have to do a lot of educating about that, because kids will come constantly, I'm being bullied, this kid bullied me. We get parents that call and tell us their kids are being bullied when somebody just did something that wasn't nice one time.
Yeah, I've actually heard that from people that I know that said, oh, my son is bullied at school all the time, I don't know what to do. And yet you hear somebody who has a child who goes to school with that child and says, yeah, you know, so-and-so is just such a wimpy kid or whatever that he just lets people bully him, or whatever the case may be. So there's always that second opinion.
It's a very serious thing when it occurs, when it's really bullying. And that does happen, but not everything is bullying.
Yeah, and I also think that, and you're the expert, but that some things are diagnosed more quickly, maybe jumped to more than in the old days again. But I had a friend whose son is now in his 20s, but when he was about 9, my friend was told, well, your son has ADHD. And so they went in for the counseling and they did all of that. And the things that the school teachers or counselors were saying were pretty much just he was a boy. And yet they wanted to put him on medication because they said he had ADHD, and my friends resisted, and he was
Yeah.
perfectly fine. So do you
Yeah.
think that there's some of that too?
I think things are, there become trends of things.
Yeah.
Truly, there shouldn't be diagnosis unless they really meet the criterion, but some people, and the other part of it is sometimes certain classrooms, a child stands out, but it's only because of the way that classroom is run or what the teacher can tolerate, you know. So you really, before any diagnosis is made, there really has to be a lot of work done and a lot of, I mean, even with diagnosis with ADHD or any of those, you know, bipolar, even any of those, there are strategies people can learn before medication is tried, and if they're not successful, then maybe something more needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, this is a fascinating discussion, and I'm so sorry, but I have to cut you off because we've reached the end of the show.
All
But
right.
for more information about Sharon's manual, The Good Egg Group, you can go to marcoproducts.com and search The Good Egg Group. You can also go to the Connecting Our Community blog on the mymcmedia.org website, and the cover of the manual is adorable, so you have to go look at it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you to Sharon for
Thank
being
you.
here. Please join us the next time for another Connecting Our Community, and have a great day.